Picture this. You're sitting in your warm room today, sipping tea or coffee, wrapped in blankets, maybe even complaining that it's too cold. Now imagine stepping back in time 20,000 years. Forget your walls, your heater, your thermostat. Around you is nothing but endless ice, biting winds, and darkness that last for months. The temperature outside isn't just chilly, it's minus 40 degrees. A cold so sharp it burns your skin and steals your breath in seconds. For Ice Age humans, this was not just weather. This was life or death. One mistake, one wrong choice could mean your entire family wouldn't survive to see the spring. There were no second chances, no emergency help, no escape. Just you, your community, and whatever you could build, hunt, or invent to fight the cold. The shocking truth is that they didn't just hide and wait for warmer days. Early humans faced winters head-on. They built shelters that could resist hurricane force, winds. They developed clothing that rivaled today's winter gear. They created ways to store food, manage fire, and keep their minds strong even in total darkness. And here's the most surprising part. Winter wasn't only a season of danger, it was also a season of growth. In the middle of the ice and snow, humans created new technologies, new ideas, and new traditions that shaped the future of our species. In many ways, winter was not just survival, it was the engine of human progress. As we move deeper into this journey, you'll step into their world. You'll wake up in a frozen hut, hear the crack of firewood, taste the smoke of preserved meat, and feel the weight of survival pressing on your shoulders. This is not the story of people who barely survived. This is the story of how our ancestors thrived in a frozen world most of us today wouldn't last a single week in. You wake up to the sound of wind howling outside. The thin animal skins covering your shelter shake as if they might tear away. Snow is piling up against the entrance. Step outside and the cold would cut into your lungs like knives. That's why the shelter you live in is more than just a hut. It's a fortress built not from wood or stone but from the bones of giants. Forget the Hollywood picture of cavemen hiding in dark, damp caves. Yes, caves offered shelter, when available, but during the freezing Ice Age winters, humans built something far more impressive. In places like modern-day Ukraine and Russia, archaeologists have uncovered huge circular houses made from hundreds of mammoth bones. Imagine stacking skulls, tusks, and jawbones together, not randomly, but carefully arranged to form thick walls. These structures could stand against hurricane-force winds and snowstorms that raged for weeks. But the bones were just the skeleton. The real protection came from layering. Once the walls were up, smaller bones were packed into gaps. Hides were stretched tightly across the outside, and sometimes snow itself was added as insulation. The result? A structure that could trap heat and resist the deadly cold. Inside, temperatures were far warmer than the frozen tundra outside, warm enough that families could survive, work, and even thrive. And these weren't simple one-room huts. Evidence shows some shelters had multiple sections, sleeping areas, tool workshops, and food storage spaces. The floors were sometimes raised with flat bones or wooden planks, lifting families above the frozen ground. This kept out moisture and stopped frost from creeping into their bedding. Inside, the most important feature was the central fire pit, but this wasn't a roaring bonfire. Fuel was precious. Fire had to be controlled and steady. Around this central hearth, families arranged their lives. Sleeping spots closer to the flames for children and elders, workspaces around the edges, where light was still strong enough to see. It was more than a shelter. It was a carefully designed system to keep people alive for months at a time. Think about what it took to build one of these bone fortresses. A single mammoth could provide hundreds of usable bones, but hunting and transporting them in deep snow was no small task. It required planning, teamwork, and determination. Each bone was heavy, each hide needed to be treated and prepared. Building one winter house could take weeks, but once it was done, it stood as a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering. And they didn't stop there. Many shelters had drainage systems, channels dug into the ground so that melting snow and ice wouldn't flood the living space. This kind of detail shows just how intelligent and resourceful Ice Age humans were. They weren't just surviving in a brutal climate. They were adapting with creativity and precision. So when you picture yourself inside one of these mammoth bone houses, imagine the difference it made. Outside, endless white, freezing winds, and silence broken only by cracking ice. Inside, warmth from a steady fire, walls that don't shake, a floor that keeps your feet dry, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, you'll see spring again. This was survival architecture at its peak, and without it, no human would have lasted through those endless frozen months. Imagine the moment you wake up inside your bone and hide shelter. The wind is still howling outside, snow rattling against the walls. The only reason you're still alive is glowing faintly in the center of the room. Fire. Fire isn't just warmth. In the Ice Age, fire is life. Without it, food can't be cooked. Water can't be melted from ice, tools can't be hardened, and bodies can't fight off the deadly cold. But here's the catch. Keeping a fire alive through months of winter isn't as simple as throwing logs on a pile. Wood is scarce, conditions are harsh, and one mistake could mean the flames go out forever. That's why Ice Age humans treated fire like the heart of their world. The hearth was never left unattended. Families passed the duty of tending flames, from person to person, day and night, ensuring it never died. Starting fire from scratch was possible with flint, pyrite, or friction, but dangerous and time-consuming. Keeping a steady flame was far safer, but they didn't waste fuel with roaring blazes. Instead, they engineered what archaeologists now call thermal zones. The fire burned at low intensity, controlled and constant, while the heat spread throughout the shelter. Sleeping spots were placed closer to the warmth. Food storage and work areas were positioned strategically to benefit from both heat and smoke. And here's where it gets fascinating. Their fires weren't just wood. They used animal fat as fuel, burning slowly and producing intense, long-lasting heat. Bones themselves could be burned too. Large mammoth bones smoldered for hours, acting like slow-release fuel. Dried animal dung was another secret weapon. It burned cleanly with steady heat and could be stored in piles for emergencies. But maybe the most ingenious technique was heat storage. Large stones were placed near the fire during the day. When they were hot enough, they were moved to sleeping areas, radiating warmth like primitive heating pads through the night. This clever system stretched resources and made the bitter nights survivable. Fire wasn't just practical, it was also psychological. Imagine endless months of darkness, storms outside, nothing but ice and snow. In that silence, fire was light. Fire was comfort. Families gathered around it not just to cook or sew, but to talk, share stories, and keep fear away. It was the beating heart of their shelter, the center of both survival and community. So when you sit by your heater today or strike a match without thinking, remember, for Ice Age humans, every flame was sacred. It was carefully built, carefully guarded, and deeply respected. Without it, no invention, no shelter, no community could last the winter. Fire wasn't just survival, it was civilization itself glowing in the dark. Step outside your shelter and the world is silent except for the wind. Snow stretches in every direction, broken only by distant shadows of reindeer, bison, or maybe, if you're lucky, a mammoth. In this frozen landscape, food is never guaranteed. Hunting isn't just about filling your belly. It's about survival for the entire group. But hunting in the Ice Age was nothing like a quick trip to the woods. It was a dangerous mission, planned with precision. Every step across the snow risked frostbite, blizzards, or even falling through thin ice. The cold itself was as deadly as the animals you hunted. So how did Ice Age humans do it? With tools that were surprisingly advanced. Spears tipped with sharp flint or bone points were carefully designed for piercing thick hides. Hunters bound stone blades to wooden shafts using animal sinew and resin that tightened like glue. Some weapons were even composite tools, combining different materials to make them stronger than anything made from just stone or wood. When prey was near, hunters worked together. A mammoth could not be taken by one person. Entire groups coordinated, driving animals toward traps, cliffs, or frozen rivers where escape was harder. Reindeer and horses were tracked by footprints in the snow, using knowledge passed down through generations about migration routes. Fishing wasn't forgotten either. Holes were cut into ice and sharpened bone spears were used to catch fish below. But hunting in winter wasn't just about strength, it was about timing. The Ice Age hunter had to read signs, the thickness of animal fur, the patterns of tracks, the behavior of birds overhead. Miss one clue, and you could waste days, or worse, come back empty-handed while your family starved, and when the kill finally came, the work had only begun. Nothing could be wasted. Meat was cut and carried back, bones set aside for tools, hides for clothing and shelter. Even tendons and fat had value, thread for sewing, fuel for lamps, and calories to keep people alive through the endless cold. Imagine the moment, standing in the snow, your breath freezing in the air as your group surrounds a fallen animal. Relief rushes through you. This means food, warmth, survival. Tonight, your shelter will echo with the sounds of cutting, cooking, and gratitude. But it also means risk. A slip on the ice, a broken spear, or a blizzard on the return trip could still turn victory into tragedy. Hunting was never just about skill. It was about luck, courage, and the strength of the group. This is what life demanded. To face the frozen wilderness armed only with sharp stones, teamwork, and determination. And somehow, generation after generation, Ice Age humans succeeded. Their hunts weren't just survival, they were proof that even in the harshest conditions humans could outthink the cold. You've returned from the hunt, dragging back precious meat, hides, and bones. The kill was hard won, but in the Ice Age survival isn't just about finding food, it's about keeping it from spoiling. After all, one mammoth can feed dozens, but what good is a feast today if starvation comes tomorrow? That's where Ice Age humans showed their brilliance. They didn't just hunt. They managed food like experts, building what we might call prehistoric kitchens. The freezing climate itself was their ally. Meat could be stored outside in snowbanks, frozen solid for weeks or even months. Nature's freezer kept it safe from rot, though not always from scavengers. Wolves and cave lions prowled, waiting for any chance to snatch what humans had gathered. To protect their supplies, people buried food deep in pits, covering it with stones and hides. But not everything could simply be frozen. So, humans developed techniques. They dried strips of meat over slow fires, turning it into something like prehistoric jerky, lightweight, long-lasting, and easy to carry. Fat was rendered and stored in containers made from hides or bone, a calorie-packed survival ration that could be eaten or burned for light and heat. And then there was fermentation. Yes, even Ice Age people may have known ways to let food partly transform, creating flavors and preserving nutrients. Bones filled with marrow were cracked and consumed fresh, but sometimes marrow was stored too, sealed tightly inside bones, and hidden in cold ground, safe until hunger struck again. Inside the shelter, the kitchen was simple but organized. Near the fire, stones acted as primitive stoves. Meat was roasted on spits, boiled in hide-lined pits with hot rocks dropped inside, or smoked slowly to keep it edible. Women, children, and elders often handled these tasks while hunters recovered their strength. Every part of the animal had a place. Hides were scraped and stretched near the warmth to soften for clothing. Bones were sorted for tools or fuel. Even sinew and stomach linings had uses. Thread, containers, or cooking bags. Waste was almost non-existent because waste could mean death. And this wasn't just about food, it was about planning. Families thought ahead, storing enough supplies to outlast storms that could trap them for weeks. They built small caches away from their shelters hidden under snow or rocks so that if disaster struck, a fire, an animal raid, or a collapse, they wouldn't lose everything. Imagine sitting inside one of these shelters on a stormy night. The wind howls, but the smell of roasting meat drifts through the air. Children chew on dried strips of venison, while adults melt fat in bone bowls for extra warmth. It's not a feast every night, but it's survival made sustainable. This was the genius of Ice Age humans, not just finding food but protecting it, stretching it, and transforming it into a resource that carried them through the long dark. Without these prehistoric kitchens, even the most successful hunt would have meant nothing more than a few days of safety. Instead, careful storage and clever cooking turned survival into something more enduring. It turned frozen winters into challenges that could be met and beaten. Step outside your shelter for even a few minutes, and the cold attacks you instantly. Your eyelashes freeze, your breath turns to ice, and your skin begins to burn from the chill. Without protection, death wouldn't take hours, it could take minutes. That's why Ice Age humans treated clothing not as fashion, but as armor. Forget the image of people in ragged furs. What they created was far more advanced. Every layer of clothing was designed with purpose, and every piece came from the animals. They hunted. Thick hides and furs became outer layers, blocking wind and snow. Softer furs lined the inside, holding warmth close to the body. This was the Ice Age version of insulation, primitive, but incredibly effective. But survival demanded more than just wrapping yourself in skins. The real skill was in tailoring. With bone needles and sinew thread, humans stitched hides together into fitted garments. Loose skins leaked heat, but tailored clothing trapped it. Some coats were hooded, some had overlapping flaps, and many included boots lined with fur. Gloves made from reindeer hide, hats from fox pelts, and layered leggings turned hunters into walking fortresses of warmth. Archaeological finds proved just how advanced they were. In Siberia, evidence shows clothing with multiple layers, sewn with fine stitches no thicker than a human hair. Decorative beads and fringes were sometimes added, not just for beauty, but because status and identity mattered even in the harshest climates. Survival didn't erase culture, it shaped it. And clothing wasn't just for humans. Infants were swaddled in fur bundles, carried close to their mothers' bodies for shared warmth. Dogs, already partners in hunting and transport, were given coverings too, protected against the biting wind as they ran across the snow. Consider the boots alone. In a frozen landscape, your feet touch the cold first. Without protection, frostbite can cripple or kill. That's why Ice Age boots were works of genius. Layered hide soles for insulation, fur linings for warmth, and sometimes even grass stuffed inside for extra padding and to wick away moisture. These details show how carefully people observed the world around them, and how determined they were to outthink the cold. But clothing was more than physical protection. It was also psychological armor. Imagine stepping outside wrapped in layers of mammoth hide, your hood pulled tight, your boots crunching through snow. Instead of being naked prey to the elements, you feel equipped, shielded, and strong. That confidence itself made survival more possible. Without this clothing, no shelter, no fire, no food storage would have been enough. The Ice Age was relentless. But with their armor of hides and furs, humans didn't just endure it. They walked across frozen rivers, followed herds for miles, and even spread into new territories. Clothing wasn't just survival, it was the technology that opened the frozen world to human exploration. So next time you zip up a winter jacket or pull on insulated boots, remember, you're wearing the distant legacy of Ice Age ingenuity. The first true winter coats weren't made in factories. They were sewn by firelight with bone needles, sinew thread, and determination to live through the night. The storm outside is endless. Snow presses against the walls of your shelter, and the wind howls like a hungry beast. For days, maybe weeks, no hunting party can leave. The fire is small, food is rationed, and darkness rules the long winter nights. In moments like this, survival depends on something more than meat, fire, or clothing. It depends on people. Social bonds were the hidden strength of Ice Age humans. Alone, a person would freeze or starve. Together, families and clans could share labor, comfort, and hope. Inside the shelter, tasks were divided with care. Hunters rested and repaired weapons. Women scraped hides, sewing new clothes by firelight. Elders passed on wisdom, telling younger ones where the herds might travel when spring came. Children helped in small ways, fetching, cleaning, learning by watching. Everyone had a role, but it wasn't all work. Even in the harshest times, humans made space for connection. Storytelling became the heartbeat of winter nights. Around the fire, voices rose and fell, weaving tales of past hunts, spirits of the land, or lessons hidden in myths. These stories were more than entertainment. They were memory, teaching, and glue that held groups together. Imagine sitting in that flickering light. Shadows dance across the walls as a hunter describes the moment a mammoth fell, or an elder whispers a tale of ancestors who faced storms even worse than this one, and survived. Children's eyes widen, adults nod, and the group feels stronger. Stories turned fear into meaning. Music joined the stories too. Simple flutes carved from bird bones, drums made from stretched hide, and rhythmic clapping or chanting filled the dark. These sounds broke the silence of winter, lifting spirits and reminding people they weren't just surviving, they were living. And then there was art. In some shelters, flat bones and cave walls became canvases. Shapes of animals, handprints, and mysterious symbols appeared by firelight. No one knows every meaning, but one thing is clear. Art gave people a way to connect to each other and to the world beyond survival. It was culture blooming even in the coldest times. But social bonds weren't only about stories and songs. They were about protection. If a child grew sick, the group shared care. If hunters were injured, others took their place. Food was divided, often unequally, to make sure the weakest, children and elders, lived. This wasn't just kindness. It was strategy. A group that protected its members survived longer. Winter was merciless. But inside those shelters, laughter still echoed, songs still rose, and stories still flowed. The cold could freeze rivers and kill herds, but it couldn't freeze the human spirit. What made Ice Age people remarkable wasn't just their tools or shelters. It was their ability to come together, to find strength in each other when the world outside tried to tear them apart. So picture it now. Outside, darkness and death. Inside, warmth, voices, and firelight. The Ice Age wasn't just survived through muscle and bone. It was survived through community. Here's a truth that may surprise you. No single human could have survived an Ice Age winter. Not the strongest hunter, not the most skilled toolmaker, not even the wisest elder. Alone, each would have perished. The real secret of survival wasn't strength. It was community. Winter demanded more than fire, food, and shelter. It demanded teamwork. A single mistake, burning too much fuel, misjudging a storm, losing a food cache, could mean disaster. But together, humans created safety nets. Knowledge was pooled, labor was shared, and risks were spread across many shoulders. Think about it. One person might master fire, another clothing, another hunting, another healing. Combined, these skills created a survival system stronger than any individual. This was humanity's true superpower, not claws, not fangs, but cooperation. Ingenuity was the second pillar. The Ice Age was a merciless teacher, forcing constant innovation. People studied the land like scientists. They learned to read animal migrations, snow patterns, and signs in the sky. They invented bone needles, tailored clothing, mammoth bone houses, and underground storage chambers. Every winter was a laboratory of survival, every challenge a chance to improve. And perhaps the most powerful innovation wasn't material at all. It was cultural. Songs, stories, rituals, and art weren't luxuries. They were survival tools. They built morale, taught lessons, and bound people together when fear and hunger threatened to tear them apart. The proof lies in history. Other species, stronger, faster, better adapted to cold, vanished. The woolly mammoth, the cave bear, the saber-toothed cat, all gone. But humans endured. Why? Because they weren't just reacting to the cold. They were adapting, inventing, and building systems of trust that carried them through. So the next time you're bundled up indoors complaining about the chill while sipping hot chocolate, remember this. Your ancestors faced winters that could kill in hours. They faced darkness that lasted for months. And they didn't just survive, they thrived, turning hardship into opportunity, turning survival into progress. That's the real story of Ice Age winters. Not one of suffering alone in caves, but of people banding together, building, learning, and passing down wisdom that still shapes us today. Winter wasn't the enemy. Winter was the forge that made us human. So the next time you feel the winter chill, remember this. Our ancestors faced storms far colder, nights far darker, and challenges far harsher than anything we know today. Yet they didn't just survive, they thrived. Because survival was never about one person. It was about community, creativity, and the human spirit that refuses to break. If this journey into the Ice Age amazed you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss more untold stories from history. Because the past still has secrets that can change the way we see the world today.